This podcast is a member of the Red 5 Network. For more Red 5 Network podcasts and content creators, visit bio.link/Red5.
Hey, this is Jedi Master Rob LeBerry, host of the Jedi Temple Archives podcast, and you're listening to... Wait, hold on 1 second. What the Force? Hey, aren't you Dr. Sonny Ravencourt of the University of Coruscant?
Nope.
No, you absolutely are. I recognize you. No, you were in the archives not too long ago. I believe you were on a tour, a guided tour. Look, here's the deal. This temple is not open to outsiders without escort. So you're going to just have to move right along, or I'm going to have to get Jedi Temple security.
Oh, come on. I can't get this kind of information at the University of Coruscant. Look at this transcription. This Jedi was murdered.
All right. That's it. We're not going to have this conversation. Padawan, please go get the temple guards.
Oh, I really don't think you need to call Jedi secure. Okay, here they come. I gotta go.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Goodbye, Dr. Ravencourt. All right, sorry about that. Where was I? Oh, right. And you're listening to ConverSWation's podcast with Pat and Charles.
ConverSWations, you're the one. You make Star Wars lots of fun.
Yeah, you do.
ConverSWations, may the Force be strong with you. Sing it, Bubby.
Yeah,
Bub.
Pat and Charles, you're so grand. Never afraid to lend a helping hand.
That's true.
ConverSWations, may the Force be strong with.
Absolutely be strong with.
I see what you did.
Oh, ConverSWations, may the Force be strong with you.
Hello and welcome to ConverSWations. I'm Charles.
And I'm not sure we heard you because your mic was too far from your face, but I'm Pat, and this is episode 137, Star Wars Shipyards.
Bring it back this way. Yeah. Hold it there.
No, this one goes here, that one goes there.
Okay. Easy. Yeah, bring it in here.
I need the power
Okay.
converters.
Yeah, drop it down. Okay, hold.
Blueprint 3, the A-Wing Starfighter.
Ooh, this is an interesting one for sure. This has quite the complex history of this little ship here.
It does, and not on your life, because this little ship and I have been through a lot together. From the databank at StarWars.com, the A-Wing fighter, with its sleek arrowhead shape, streamlined cockpit, and massive twin engines, the A-Wing Starfighter suggests raw speed even when parked within Alliance hangar bays.
Ooh.
Yeah. Faster than even the TIE Interceptor.
Which is crazy to think about.
It is crazy to think about. But, I mean, it's a very tiny ship. It's very aerodynamic, and it's got huge engines. And it's well-suited for lightning strikes. It sports a pair of pivoting laser cannons on each wingtip, and the starfighters of Green Squadron, which is how they were known in the original trilogy. They flew in the Battle of Endor, and they were made up of A-Wing starfighters. It began before then and ended much later than that, even beyond the Resistance fight against the First Order.
Yeah, we'll get to that, though. We'll get to that part. Yeah.
It's just a little synopsis from StarWars.com.
Start to finish. Yeah.
Right.
And so we've got the manufacturer is Kuat Systems Engineering.
Right.
And for those who follow us, which maybe one or two people.
Oh, you're too kind.
Well, Scott's there. He's always there.
That's true.
But the Kuat Systems Engineering is also the firm or the manufacturing company that also built the Star Destroyers. So if you're a keen watcher or listener of our episodes and our show, that would be episode 126 of the previous Shipyards episode. But Not only that, the Kuat Systems Engineering also built the Slave One, which is interesting as well.
Yeah, Slave One's kind of a one-off, sort of a much like Boba Fett himself. It's kind of a prototype, and then they were like, this is all we got money for, so we're just doing one. So that Slave One is very unique and strange looking. The sort of aerodynamics between both of these arrowhead shaped transports is really kind of it falls in line with like when you look at like an Audi or like a Mercedes and things like that.
Very distinctive.
That tend to have throughout their different models similar lines and contours and general sort of design elements.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not surprising that they would have similar features for sure. Obviously, the huge major difference is that these were single pilot fighter ships.
Yes.
Versus the massive presence of a Star Destroyer.
Right, much more nimble, much more strike and get out sort of approach to design for that. Now, originally these were designed and envisioned by Ralph McQuarrie for Return of the Jedi. So we saw those sketches. Well, we didn't see them. He had produced the sketches for Return of the Jedi, and as you alluded to, on the Battle of Endor. And so if you want more information on Ralph McQuarrie, you can check out our episode 60, where we delved into all of his massive influence on the Star Wars universe for that for sure. So we first see, at least in filmed entertainment, of the, well, at this point, the Delta 7 Aetherspite class light interceptor in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, it's very interesting because while you're mentioning the prequels, the Delta 7 Jedi Starfighters were very similar to the A-Wing. And so, you're looking at a vessel that's like 7 to 7.5 meters long and like 4.5 meters wide and just over 2 meters high, which is about the size of a womp rat. So, it's not quite enough room for an astromech droid in there. There's barely enough room for a humanoid pilot, really.
Yeah. Yes.
So, their hyperspace coordinate data bank was very limited in terms of, I guess how many entries that they could contain, because most of your hyperspace coordination was through your astromech.
And then the hyperspace ring, right? Because they connected into that.
Correct. Which is also taken from the Jedi Starfighter. You basically take these vessels that were very effective for the Jedi to use and very complicated. That's why they were Jedi Starfighters, because you almost needed an affinity towards the Force in order to fly them.
That's right, because they're very sort of minimalist in what you could adjust. You're piloting by feel, almost, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're feeling in tune to the vehicle. And in the first iterations, like the Delta 7s, the astromech was off to the side, placed into the wing.
Yeah.
That Jedi reflex came into play, where you couldn't just like throw any regular pilot in there and they could fly this thing. It was a nimble ship that could easily go off course if you didn't know what you were doing.
Right.
Then throw in the astromech imbalance in one wing. It's almost like a high performance vehicle. If you don't know what you're doing, this thing's going to go off the road in a second.
Absolutely. And much like the pod racers, everyone was astounded to hear that there was a human that was in the pod races because of the just very intense reaction times and things that you would need in such a fast vehicle as a pod racer. And the same held true with the A-Wing, because it was extremely fast. So, with the slightest miscalculation, you could, fly into a star, bounce right off a supernova. So these types of things ain't like dust and crops. And so, they were really effectively flown by Jedi in the initial versions of them.
Right, and they were like the Jedi Starfighter because it required their level of skill to be able to control these ships. even though they were designed for other purposes, it came down to their innate ability to feel the ship and its systems. And it's funny. It's like it's almost like a call out to Luke turning off his targeting computer on the X-wing in the Death Star run, where he doesn't need the technology to assist him in knowing when to launch his the missiles.
Yeah.
He feels it, and like even though the X-wing is bouncing back and forth between the walls and obviously evading Vader, it's his Jedi ability that takes over. It becomes a feel system versus a mechanical system.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what made the A-wing pilots so successful is that ability to do that. But they did away with the hyperspace ring, because if you can integrate a hyperdrive into the ship, then that cuts out that extra step of having to dock in the ring, and then having to get back to it. If you're in a battle, you're undocked from your hyperspace ring and flying around in battle. If you need to cut and run, you have to get back to your ring.
Yeah, it's a big disadvantage.
Absolutely. So if they're able to integrate those like they were into the early A-wings, then they do away with the hyperspace ring, and you can essentially jump from hyperspace, anywhere at any time at a moment's notice.
And we see that in, again, Attack of the Clones. Obi-Wan Kenobi took a D7 with R4P17 to Kamino and Geonosis. Like, he required that hyperspace ring to get them from Coruscant to these, distant planets. Like you said, to cut and run, you've got 2 steps to get in there. You got to redock with that hyperspace ring, giving your adversaries that extra chance to catch up to you before you get to the ring, or they destroy the ring and you're screwed again.
You're sit and duck. And let's not forget the importance of that R4 unit, because if it weren't for James Arnold Taylor's Obi-Wan saying R4, then I wouldn't have recognized his Lieutenant Beck saying R4 in The Rise of Resistance.
Ooh, that was your trip for that? Wow.
The way he said R4 was how I knew it was him.
Nice.
Yeah. So props to R4. The problem is,
and to James Arnold Taylor.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, there's always props to James. So the problem when you design and manufacture a vehicle that basically only a Jedi can fly, and then they all get murdered, your customer base shrinks considerably. Okay, so they planned and pivoted from the Jedi Starfighter to the A-wing to sell to the Empire once after Order 66 and all. They likely cost more, what with shields and basic pilot protection and those frivolous things, than the TIE Fighter. So the Empire instead went with the TIE Fighter because duh. Additionally, and it's interesting because it's kind of like I want to say the guy from Bad Batch, the guy that was voiced by the guy in Always Sunny, Jimmy. Doctor.
What's his face?
Doctor Bad Guy.
Doctor Bad Guy. Hey, please help us with the name of Doctor Bad Guy. Let us know in the comments or whatever.
Doctor Bad Guy. So it's basically like, once you've shown me this technology, we know what you're capable of, and we're going to steal it and not let you have any part of it. So basically, once the Empire knew that the tech for the A-wing existed, they didn't allow the Kuat manufacturing to mass produce the ships, because they feared that they could be used against them in, say, a galactic civil war or something. So the prototypes were sold to a kingdom, who eventually sold them to the rebels. So really all they have is prototypes.
Right. And those prototypes were stripped down because, like you said, they were trying to match the speed of the TIE Fighter in the original generation, the Delta 7. And like you said, the Imperials, all they wanted was basically a bean can with laser cannons. That's all they cared about. And it fit only humanoids. They didn't care about different species. They were very specious in their approach, the Empire, I mean. So as they were evaluating these ships, even though Kuat Industrial Engineering had built them these multi-billion credit cruisers, like for the Star Destroyers, when it came down to it, they couldn't even sell them on their light battleships because they didn't fit their mold. And it was still too complicated or too protective of the pilots. They said, no, we're just going to go with the TIE fighters. And yeah, so they sold them to the kingdom of Tamuzan. It was an outer rim planet. They bought the prototype R-22 for their planetary defense systems because it was very reminiscent of their culture's ceremonial spear. And again, this comes back to the arrowhead. So it was almost like a cultural decision that the ship itself represented their armaments on the planet. So they felt a connection to the design of it versus the versatility and ability of the ships to be able to protect them from planetary and exoplanetary attacks.
Right. And so they were very stock, I guess, when they then sold them to the Rebel Alliance. So then the Rebels got their mechanics in there and stripped out the heavier components, made the ships faster, and beefed up their engines a little bit too.
Yeah, and that was all through battlefield testing. They went through different iterations. They noted things that worked, things that didn't work. And so Kuat Systems was open to the idea that, hey, look, they're battle testing these things in real time. We should take their advice to make modifications that would make these vehicles better and therefore more sellable. And one of the biggest differences between what we see as the A7, the Delta 7 and the eventual R-22 is that one notch visually, that notch in the front end of the nose.
Yeah.
Do you know where we first see that notch?
Yeah, in Star Wars.
Damn it. But where specifically in the Star Wars timeline?
Space, obviously.
Okay. A little bit more resolution, a little bit more defined than that.
Zoom in.
Yes.
Wait, where do we first see the notch in the A-wing?
Yeah.
On the front, duh. You mean like
what series do we see?
Star Wars Rebels.
No. We first see the notch
Obi-Wan
in the quote-unquote A-wing with its double-sided laser cannons in Droids.
Oh, I didn't watch
in 1985 in the animated series of Droids.
Wow. I was way off.
Yeah, so we see there was an episode in Droids where we see this A-wing as part of one of the assault, and we see the notch in the front of the A-wing. We see the dual-sided laser cannons on the side, and it's powerful double engines at the back, which is kind of cool, historically at least.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So you know what else is cool?
What?
All the tech on the A-wings.
Ooh, it is very cool.
So, obviously, as you said, they had the dual laser cannons.
Mm-hmm.
They also had concussion missile launchers.
That is freak. No, where were those? I don't.
Like on the bottom, obviously.
That's exactly what I thought. Below the deck, because we've never seen we never see the underside of the A-wing. We only see the upside of it.
Right. I don't even know if they're on the old Power of the Force A-wing. I gotta find that thing, break it out. Yeah. But there's the landing gear and stuff down there. So yeah, it's probably down the bottom. It's clearly not on the top. Okay?
No, exactly.
And it wouldn't really make sense to be on the top either.
Right, because they're
if you're launching concussion missiles, that's you don't want it anywhere near your pilot. That's for sure.
You want to be dropping it and getting out of there.
Right? Yeah, you're not gonna hope for the best. So they had a pretty strategic defense systems that included sensor jammers, deflector shields, and an outer armor made of reinforced Durasteel.
Yes.
So if all else fails, you're gonna take a bunch of pew-pews before you start going down.
Therefore, the Imperials hated it. There's way too many defenses on this thing.
Right? No, like all we got's a bunch of
nothing.
All they got is more ties behind them.
And a thin layer of plasticeel.
Plasticeel. That's it. Oh man, what a mess. Yeah, so they had the dual sunlight engines and powerful hyperdrives, so they could do quick jumps to light speed and optimal maneuvering. So they could outmaneuver a TIE and they could outrun one. So that really was a huge advantage to anyone that came into contact with a squadron of TIE fighters, because you at least stood a chance to fight back or escape.
Yes. And before we get to more details of where the A-Wing transformed into the RZ-1 A-Wing and what we know today as the A-Wing, we're going to take a quick break and we're right back.
In this great big galaxy, have you ever felt like you were meant for more than bullseyeing womp rats or fixing broken speeders on some backwater moon? Then Plo Koon Piloting Institute should be your next destination. That's right, at PKPI, learn to fly from aviation experts who've mastered the art of flying many ship styles, like Clone Commander Wolf.
That's right, we instruct on the Delta 7 starfighters, ARC 170s, N1 starfighters, and A-Wings.
The Institute even has specialty pilots with expertise in improved Actus-class Jedi starfighters and the brand new X-Wing starfighters, right?
Yes, we do.
Well, clearly Mr. Wolf has a class to give, so we'll let him go. But before we do, we have a special message from Jedi Master Plo Koon himself.
Kotoya, young pilot. Join me to become the best pilot you can be. I've trained some of the best and worst.
Master Plo, who are you talking to?
We even offer courses in flying casual, where you can learn to keep your distance without looking like you're keeping your distance. Casual flying results not guaranteed.
Hey, we're back. So, as we were talking about before, the change from the early iterations to what is the sort of iconic image of the A-Wing.
Yeah.
You know, you got the X-Wing, it's got the X-foils. Okay. Mm-hmm. You got the B-Wing that doesn't look like a B. But you have the A-Wing fighter.
Yeah.
Which was not named for the shape. You'd think it kind of looks like an A.
It does. Look at especially with the notch, as we talked about. Yeah. The notch helps, yeah.
Right, but it's not. Do you know why it was called the A-Wing or the A-Fighter?
No.
All right, so when Ralph McQuarrie developed the concept art, basically he had worked with Joe Johnson, and they came up with a couple designs, 2 designs actually, A and B. And the one that they went with...
Are you serious?
The one that they went with was A. So
oh my God, mind blown. Are you serious? That is...
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So that A fighter was originally designed with the white-blue color scheme, which kind of is what we see in Rebels, which is very highly McQuarrie influenced. And then, of course, it goes to the more tan and maroon sort of color scheme that we see in the Battle of Endor and all that. That's sort of more the recognizable, iconic A-Wing.
Yeah.
From film.
Oh, that is cool. Oh my God, I didn't know that. That is so cool. And, you know, before we move any further, not that I want to go through this, but I think we just need to acknowledge one of our favorite Jedi who perished, as far as we know, in an A-Wing at Order 66.
I don't want to do that.
Well, you had mentioned Plan and Pivot before, which was like a very loose association to Jedi Master Plo Koon. Jedi Master Plo Koon.
Too much plan, not enough pivot for him. Stop it. Stop. Yes. Yeah, so he was shot down in his A-Wing. Of course, he was a Jedi fighter pilot. So
of course,
so that made and he's one of the best pilots.
Yes,
he was a very very skilled pilot. So so it made sense that he'd be flying one of those and be very successful at it. In fact, so successful that the only people that could take him down were the people that he trusted. Boo.
Oh,
I know. I hate it. Stupid.
Wow. So with all of these modifications and changes, we now move into the RZ-1 A-Wing Interceptor. And
yes.
That's where one of the biggest differences is that there's no longer an astromech. So now it's reliant on the pilot to be able to control this high-speed interceptor that basically is the epitome of the Rebels. It's like get in, get out, get the job done, and not be killed. and
Right.
you no longer have an astromech helping you.
Strike and run.
Yeah, exactly. So you need Jedi skill levels to be able to control this and not perish in the mission.
Right.
So with the RZ-1 and its maneuverability,
Mm-hmm.
Kuat Systems also developed the RZ-1T, which had a trainer seat for young pilots, which is crazy and really cool. And we see that in
It's
Rebels.
not cool. It's terrifying.
Well, yes, but also highly effective. We see that in Rebels Season 3, Episode 3, Holocrons of Fate, where we have Kanan and... Was it Kanan? I think it was Kanan and Ezra.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So you got this company who is building these ships, like trying hard for quite a while to get these A-wings, as it were, or all these iterations of this ship to become the quintessential either Imperial or Rebel ship, an X-Wing or a TIE fighter. They're desperately trying every way to ingrain themselves into these two groups.
Yes.
And they still don't have that. They're fringe, but they're still critical in the eventual outcome of what the Galactic War comes to.
Yeah.
They never get that strong foothold of the TIE fighter or the X-Wing. Sorry,
Right.
It's just not happening.
No, that's very true. And then that's what the issue is you've got only a limited number of them, and so then you run into almost a fleet supply issue.
Yes.
If they were able to get their brand out there effectively, then one of these two forces would have been able to get them to manufacture an entire fleet of them,
right,
and really do very well with them.
Right. They're like the Tesla of car manufacturers. Yeah, they're good, but we're not quite sure if it's not going to work the whole time. So but it's like in the Rebels series where the Y-wings, they're serviceable,
right,
but they're not useful enough, so they're getting rid of them. The Rebels end up stealing a whole bunch of them, and
yes,
they're useful to the Rebel cause, but not to the Imperials. And so we see that the A-wings eventually become part of the Battle of Endor, because at that point the Rebels are looking for any kind of ships that they can fly that can be part of the Rebel battalion that eventually topples the Empire. We're going to take everything we can get our hands on, and especially in this case, the A-wings at this point are extremely refined ships that are fantastic. They've been tested over 20 years at this point. They are finely tuned for attacking.
Yeah, and it's got it down to testing them and seeing what they need and seeing what modifications they need to make, really to make these ultimate strike vehicles. And unfortunately, with just so few of them, the Empire recognizes and realizes how lethal these strike ships can be. And I guarantee you, if you've got A-wings, Y-wings, bombers, and X-wings and all, they're taking out those A-wings as soon as possible.
Right. I mean, they're equivalent of the TIE fighters for the Rebels, albeit in smaller numbers. It's not their entire fleet, but that portion of their attacking fleet is extremely dangerous to the Empire.
Oh, yeah.
And they were part of the Battle of Endor. Fewer numbers than we see in other ships, but they were a key component of the Battle of Endor, and including a very important character, a mother of a character that we see in the sequel trilogy.
Yes, sir. So Shara Bay, who was the mother of one Poe Dameron, actually fought in the Battle of Endor, and her husband was part of the ground assault team. And
wow, I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she and Luke, actually shortly after the events of Endor, went to Crate to see about an old Rebel base and stronghold there, which is kind of one of the important plot points for the sequel trilogy.
Wow.
Where they end up on Crate in the Last Jedi.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's in the comics, right?
Yeah, that's correct. They did a Shatter something. It was the road to the Force Awakens, I
Focus.
guess.
Okay. All right.
So it was like a mini series. It was like
Yeah.
5 or 6 of them, and that was the one that had the first issue was the Ewok Village celebration with Lando clapping.
Oh yes.
Yes.
I remember that.
Yes. That's the cover of the issue number
Oh
1.
my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So through that, they uncovered the abandoned base on Crate, and Shara really kind of escorts Luke with the intel he has on the place. And then, of course, she and her husband conceive baby Poe. And
Yeah.
then 30 years later, he's one of the best pilots in the galaxy.
And the A-Wings themselves are also involved in the Battle of Jakku as well. So again, these ship designs that were introduced first in the Clone Wars, they're still around and had been dispersed enough, yet not destroyed, and they're still showing up in the Battle of Jakku as part of the integral battle that's eventually toppled, for the most part at least, the Imperials and set off on the the unknown regions for what eventually became the First Order.
Yeah, and of course, you have mechanics and all that. If you keep a antique very well kept after, it's going to last a long time. It's the same with the Rebel mechanics and all, but it's a testament to these ships. Not only versatility and like hull integrity and all that they were able to be used for so long, so effectively, in such small numbers.
Yeah, it's like a classic car where it was so well built, like a Charger or a Challenger. You think, pick any classic muscle car from the 70s that you can pick it up today. It's got its core components. You can bolt on some modern day pieces to it, and it still runs because it was so well built and it's
still
solid in
runs
its
well.
foundation. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so the Kuat systems engineering realized that, and in the post Jakku, the New Republic era, realized that its A-Wing and its forgotten prototype of the RZ2 model was relevant for the new burgeoning government that was going to be taking over the galaxy. And after many, many years of standardized testing in field and all of these different modifications, they were able to make changes to their basic chassis, making it slimmer and longer and yield to even more speed. The RZ2s became more useful for the Resistance during the war with the First Order. So it was like a resurgence for them. They've come full circle. They were this marginalized third-party, for lack of a better term, ship manufacturer that the Rebels nor the Imperials really latched onto, but they were just always hanging around, modifying, perfecting, tinkering with their design. They came out quite on top in the Battle of First Order and the New Republic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Again, that's having not only the equipment to do so, but then knowing how to use it and how to optimize it and how to, for lack of a better term, perfect it to the point where it's such an effective tool that you can get these small victories, and then you can build upon them, and you can continue to gain that momentum in battle, and then really bring awareness throughout the galaxy, and then obviously eventually overthrow the Empire, and then still be a force to be reckoned with when it came to the First Order.
Yeah. And we see that actually in The Last Jedi. We see Lieutenant Taliesin, quote unquote, Tali Lintra. She was piloting an RZ2 as they were going over the Dreadnought, over the base where the Rebels were basically trying to scramble themselves out of there. So that was, again, an A-Wing predecessor now in the sequel trilogy. And we see pure A-Wings again assembling amongst all of these other decades and several decades old ships amassing over Exegol, battling the final order in Rise of Skywalker.
Oh yeah, and then when all those ships show up and everything,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
there's all manner of vessels there, and yeah,
yeah.
there's absolutely A-wings to join in and cause an effective strike.
Yep. And at that point, you've got different generations of A wings,
Hmm.
but each generation of this ship served a purpose for that generation of Alliance and Rebel
Right.
attacks. That, yeah, it may have been small numbers, but you were huge in effect, which is kind of a cool story for that ship.
Oh yeah, and again, when you're talking about relative handful of X-wings
Hmm.
and fleets of TIE fighters and Star Destroyers and Death Stars and all this stuff, it's like anything you can get your hands on is going to help. But when you've got a cluster of these A-wings, it's a game changer. And I think it was one of those things where had the Empire been willing to loosen up the purse strings a little bit and and give the green light for them to manufacture several A-wings for
Hmm.
the Empire, it would have been a whole different story when it comes to the
Yeah.
battles.
And it would never have even uh, landed on the plate of the Rebels as an option for a striking vehicle because it would have been controlled by the Empire. They would never have had them. So they had TIE fighter speed and TIE fighter class nimbleness to be able to attack them with, while the Empire didn't want them because they had too many protections for the pilots and the expendability of the TIE fighters. That was their paramount. And like you said 20 minutes ago, we're not going to attack them with quality, we're going to attack them with quantity.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But you can imagine that if they had those, not only would the rebels not, but the rebels would be having to contend with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that would be a major change in that Navy.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's something that can't be taken for granted. Which again is part of the Empire's logic is like they're too big to fail, and
Hmm.
we've shoot aside this vehicle because we've got our own designs, our own plans, and that ends up being part of their downfall is that you shoot off a very effective vessel and it came back to bite you.
Exactly. We put that in perspective, and then we look at then how the A-wings have been represented in toys. Like we've got a Lego version of the
Oh
A-wings.
yeah.
We've got the models. We've got those tin 3D models.
Uh-huh.
It's up there with the X-wing, the TIE fighter, the B-wing as a desirable collectible for those of us in the real world. That's probably kind of cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I have the old one from like 93 or 94 somewhere around here. And it
I
was
have it.
it was do you have mine? You have
No,
mine?
I don't.
Oh
I
man.
just want it.
Yeah, well.
So
So
good.
it's
It's
yeah, I mean
it's
it's
battle worn. It's got like blaster.
oh yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's very cool. So that I think, when I used to have everything kind of set up in my basement, like hanging from strings and all,
Ah,
that was one of my favorites because it just was it had such a cool presence. And,
it does.
of course I had that. And then the little one with the little micro figure things and,
Uh-huh.
the
Yeah,
new
I
one.
want that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So yeah, all that stuff is very, iconic, like I said before, and has become, key parts of many collections as well.
Yeah, and it really has added itself into the pantheon of classic Star Wars ships, like the X-Wing, the B-Wing, even the TIE Fighter, but the A-Wing has gone through so many iterations and has been so important through different eras of Star Wars. It's one of those stalwart ship designs that is a classic, immediate classic. And
Yeah,
all thanks to Joe Johnston and
and Ralph
Ralph McQuarrie.
McQuarrie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it all boils down to, the real reason why it's called the A-wing is because A is the first letter of the alphabet, and it's probably the greatest ship in Star Wars. So our good friend
Nice.
Michelle over at the Hyperion Adventures podcast, she may want
Oh.
to change her favorite ship, her dream ship to fly, from the TIE fighter to something a little more agile and quick.
Right. and Rob and Kim at the Planet Pivot may want to change their favorite ship from I don't know, Millennium Falcon to the Delta Wing, and I can talk to them about that as well.
Oh man, I don't know if there's a chance of that. But you know what there is a chance of?
What?
Finding our social media presence.
Nice.
You can find us all over the place if you're looking hard enough. But you can find us on our website, ConverSWations.com, Facebook.com/ConverSWations. We are on the Twexes at Swations. Instagram, we are at ConverSWations over there. We are at ConverSWations on Threads.
Mm-hmm.
And we have our Etsy shop, CommerceSWations. One of us is working on a new design.
Yes, it's coming along. It's coming along, yeah.
I mean, it's like molasses is in January in the Yukon, but that's okay. So then also all of that and more is on our link tree, link.tree/ConverSWations. And I think, we heard from Ro today. So
yes.
I guess we're still proud founding members of the Red 5 Podcast Network at bio.link/Red5.
Well, we haven't heard from Brad, so we're...
That's okay. As long as we've heard from part of them, we're okay. I mean, that's how I see it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I mean, once we're cast out, well, we're on our own. So that being said, I guess this episode was A-okay.
Greetings, listener. Just a reminder that the podcast you just heard is a proud member of the Red 5 Network family. Red 5 Network offers you a great variety of shows you'll be sure to love. So the next time you're itching for quality content, make sure you head over to Red 5 Network. You'll find this podcast along with a whole lot more. All wings report in. It's the Red 5 Network.